Gareth will talk for about 35-40 minutes, and then what we hope to do is just have a sort of informal gathering afterwards. Help yourself to more wine. If you've got questions to ask, feel free to ask Gareth. Of course, there will be some books available for purchase, and Gareth will sign these as well if you ask him, okay. And on your way out, if you'd like to pick up a leaflet, because I do have about 4 or 5 other events planned between now and the end of September. Anyway, let's all put our hands together and give a huge round of applause to Gareth.
Well, thanks very much for coming. It's very nice to see some people I don't know. It's refreshing. Well, I got the idea for doing something different, because what I usually do is I read my own stuff and people applaud and enjoy it enormously, of course. And about a couple of months ago, I bought this book of Clive James's, who's a wonderfully articulate critic. And he says some very wise and correct things. In other words, he agrees with what I think. And this came out just before he died, and it's really an anthology of all the poems he had by heart, and there are 80 of them. Wow. So I thought, oh, I'll do that, that'll be different. So I thought I started memorising some poems, and it's a road to disaster, because as you get older your memory is just not what it was, especially for names. Nominal aphasia. I can remember nominal aphasia, but I can't remember anybody's name. Or faces even now. And about a couple of weeks ago, a man drew up in his car and leaned out of the window, greeted me warmly and said, "Hello, Gareth." And I said, "Oh, hello, I had no idea who he was." So I thought, how do you get around this? So I said, well, tell me, when did we last meet? And he said, "Yesterday." Anyway, I thought these are poems that I've tried to commit to memory, and if I forget, I shall just lie down and give up the ghost. But I wanted to start with a Thomas Wyatt poet. And Thomas Wyatt was a contemporary of Henry VIII. In fact, he was supposedly had an affair with Anne Boleyn, though it was not actually proven. And the poem, I have to say, it's the English language. Are you enjoying this talk? Yeah. The English language is a curious thing, because it's made up of 2 completely opposite locutions. So one is the Anglo-Saxon. So if it hadn't been for we owe a huge debt to William the Conqueror. If William the Conqueror hadn't come round, we'd still be speaking Anglo-Saxon, or form of Anglo-Saxon. And so you get that mixture. He brought the French Norman over here. And the toffs would speak the French Norman, but the peasant would speak Anglo-Saxon. And you can see that when you think of food. You know, the basic Anglo-Saxon words are cow, pig, sheep. Once they go into the kitchen, they become mutton, beef, which are all French Norman words. That's jolly interesting, isn't it? And anyhow, he brought the language, which meant you had this Germanic, blunt, down-to-earth language with this polysyllabic Latin Romance language, and that's what gives the English its absolute quality. I can't think of an example. Oh, there's a line in Macbeth where Macbeth is trying to wash the blood off his hands, and he puts it in the sea, but it says, rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one red. So you have that Latinate, multitudinous seas incarnadine, and then green, red, something like that. Anyhow, this is a Thomas Wyatt poem, because the modern English, these 2 languages coalesced sometime in the 15th century. And not only did the tongue change, but the writing changed. So up until that time, most poems, if you're interested in English literature, were epics about legends and battles and kings and so on and so forth. And for the first time in the English language, poets started to write about themselves in a psychological way. So Thomas Wyatt was one of the first to do this, Sir Thomas Wyatt. And this poem is about, he's getting older, and the women who used to visit him and were compliant, and as he said, would take bread from his hands, have now grown wild and are embracing younger lovers. I know exactly what he means. I'm really upset about it. So they flee from me. They flee from me is called. And he introduced a sonnet in the language because he went to Italy and he met Petrarch and read his poems. They flee from me. See if I can remember it. They flee from me that sometime did me seek, with naked foot stalking within my chamber. After that I seen them gentle, tame and meek, who now are wild, and do not once remember that sometimes they have put themselves in danger to take bread at my hand. But now they range, busily seeking in continual change. Thank be fortune, it hath been otherwise. Oh, 20 times better, but once especial. In thin array, after a pleasant guise, when her loose gown did from her shoulders fall, and she be caught in her arms long and small, and therewithal so sweetly did me kiss, and softly said, dear heart, how like you this? It was no dream, for I lay broad waking, but all is turned now through my gentleness into a bitter fashion of forsaking. And I have leave to go of her goodness, and she also to use new-fangledness. But since that I unkindly so am served, how like you this? What has she now deserved? And I got through that one. And the second poem is by John Donne. And again, he's lovelorn. He's been dumped by his lady love, and he uses it metaphorically. He's dead, so he calls his lady love a murderess, and he returns as a ghost to see her in the arms of her new younger lover, who doesn't perform as well as John Donne, of course, as he remarks. When by their scorn. So he's appearing as a ghost. When by thy scorn, O murderess, I am dead, and that thou think'st thee free from all solicitation from me, then shall my ghost come to thy bed, and thee feigned vestal in worse arms shall see. Then thy sick taper will begin to wink, and he whose thou art then, being tired before, will, if thou stir or pinch to wake him, think'st thou cause for more, and in false sleep will from thee shrink. And then, poor aspen wretch, neglected thou, bathed in a cold quicksilver sweat wilt lie, a verier ghost than I. What I will say, I will not tell thee now, lest that preserve thee. And since my love is spent, I had rather thou shouldst painfully repent, than by my threatenings rest still innocent. I'm going to attempt this My Last Duchess by Robert Browning, which is a hell of a long poem. It's actually a dramatic sort of monologue, and it's like a soliloquy from a play, the rest of which has gone missing. And the subtitle of it is Ferrara. And the speaker is the Duke of Ferrara, who is an absolutely overweeningly arrogant, proud, dismissive aristocrat. And when he was 27, he married Lucrezia di Medici, who was of the Medici banking family. She was 14. She died at 17. And there's a wonderful portrait of her by Bronzino. I know you'll immediately go home after this and look at her. And the theme of the play, he looks on the Medicis as rather jumped up nouveau riche compared with his own grand lineage. So she died of tuberculosis, apparently, but the rumour was that he poisoned her in order that he could marry a more aristocratic lady, which is what we men do, of course. And the speaker is addressing an emissary from the court of the new bride, And he's taking her around his palace to look at his wonderful statues and paintings and so forth. And he comes across a painting which is of his last Duchess. And he pulls the curtain aside. See if I can remember all this now. My last Duchess. Oh, actually, there's a film of Browning. They gave a dinner for him in honour of his reputation, and he decided to recite one of his poems, and he forgot halfway through. So, anyhow, there he is. So he's a nasty bit of work. That's my last Duchess, painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. Fra Pandolf's hands work busily a day, and there she stands. Will please you sit and look at her? I said Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance, but to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I, and seemed as they would ask me, if they durst, how such a glance came there. So, not the first are you to turn and ask thus. Sir, 'twas not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek. Perhaps Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half-flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whate'er she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one. My favour at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, a bowed cherry summer fisher's fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would rouse from her the approving speech, or blush at least. She thanked men. Good. But thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift. And who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling, even had you skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an one and say, just this or that in you disgusts me, here you miss or there exceed the mark. And if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to yours forsooth, and made excuse, he then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whene'er I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? This grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. Now there she stands, as if alive. Will please you rise, and we'll meet the company below. Then I repeat, the Count your master's known munificence is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed at starting, is my object. Nay, we'll go together now, sir. Notice Neptune now, taming a seahorse, thought of rarity, which Klaus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me.
Wow.
Oh, it's a Thomas Hardy poem. You know, Thomas Hardy wrote about anything that crossed his path. And a flower, a person, something, somebody on a train, everything. He left us 950 poems. And this one is, he's walking by the seaside and he finds a lady's sunshade in a chink of rock. And of course, being Thomas Hardy, he starts wondering who was the woman who owned that sunshade. He sort of half falls in love with her, and then being Hardy, she dies, of course. That's it, well, it's going all right so far, that's it. Ah, it's the skeleton of a lady's sunshade. Here at my feet in the hard rock's chink, only a naked sheaf of wires. 20 years have gone with their livers and dyes since it was silked in its white or pink. Noonshine riddles the ribs of the sunshade, no more a screen from the weakest rays. Nothing to tell us the hue of its dyes, nothing but rusty bones as it lies in its coffin of stone, unseen till today. Where is the woman who carried that sunshade up and down this seaside place, little thumb standing against its stem, thoughts perhaps bent on a love stratagem, softening yet more the already soft face? Is the fair woman who carried that sunshade a skeleton just as her property is, laid in the chink that none may scan? And does she regret, if regret dust can, the vain things thought when she flourished this? And this is E. Cummings' poem. I love E. Cummings, and it's called Buffalo Bill. And it's a very edgy, rather dark poem. Buffalo Bill, in case you don't know, was a famous American cowboy. You know, you met him. And, towards the end of his life, not towards, the last half of his life, he had a show where he had Indians and people on bareback and shooting pigeons like that. And in fact, when I was a little boy in Wales, my grandmother had a little smallholding near Carnarvon, not Carnarvon. And he said to me, there was a workman there, a labourer workman called Robert Davy Thomas. And he said to me, he'd been to the Buffalo Bill show in Carnarvon. And he said at the end of it, they let a pig free and greased it, and anybody who caught it could take it home. It was brilliant. Anyway.
Idea for the show.
Yeah. Buffalo Bill's defunct. Buffalo Bill's defunct. He used to ride a water-smooth silver stallion and break 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pigeons just like that. Jesus, he was a handsome man. And what I want to know is, how do you like your blue-eyed boy, Mr. Death? That's a good poem. One of the nice things that Clive James says here is, he says, and I agree with this entirely, with the poem, the most important thing is the way it sounds when you say it. At that rate, even the most elementary nursery rhyme has it all over the kind of overstuffed epic that needs 10 pages of notes for every page of text and reduces all who read it to paralysed slumber, or even worse, bogus admiration. And I wrote some little nursery rhymes, if I can find them. And it's a nursery rhyme about a little girl called Anne, and it was meant for a collection. It was going to be called The Dark at the End of the Nursery. No wonder nobody published it. And it's about death, a mother dying, but of course it doesn't mention death. It's called Shadow Play. It's a nursery rhyme. Anne runs down the garden path as fast as she knows how. Out to the daisy-freckled lawn she calls the here and now. Look, she says, look at my shadow, how it spreads so dark and tall. But when I lie flat with my face in the grass, there's no shadow of me at all. Mummy wears lilies pressed to her breast. The car is long and black. Look at the game I'm playing, says Anne. It's called pushing the shadows back. And I wrote a lot of little short poems. I can probably remember them. And I wrote this on a plane coming back from Canada, which is called An Attempt at the Shortest Poem in the World, which goes, already this is too long. And this is, you have to remember the title. This is called Unemployable. I'm reading this because after all those gloomy poems, I think I'm going to read poems about childhood. They're children's poems, but the poems about childhood, really. This is Unemployable. I used to work in the thurka, he said, between the intermittent showers that emerged from his mouth. Oh, I said, what did you do? I used to catch bullets in my teeth. There's another one, lovesick. I'm a schoolgirl, sick with love. I mope and gaze at the moon. I don't know who the boy is yet. I hope I meet him soon. And this is a country singer's lament, which goes, I made a million singing love songs. I got 2 wives chasing me. They live in hope and bitterness. I live in Tennessee. All right, so I'll read something from here. When I was about 10, I loved reading in bed, you know, with the light on, and my sister, with a sort of moral superiority, would come and switch the light off as I was being naughty, and then I'd have to get up, switch the light on, and then she wanted to be a tragic actress. So she'd come to my bedroom, and say, the best thing about being an actress is you get to die a lot. And she'd drop on the liner and lie there inert for about half an hour. She was called Beryl, actually, but I call her my sister Betty. My sister Betty said, I'm going to be a famous actress. Last year she was going to be a missionary. Famous actresses always look unhappy but beautiful, she said, pulling her mouth sideways and making her eyes turn upwards so they're mostly white. Do I look unhappy but beautiful? I want to go to bed and read, I said. Famous actresses suffer and have hysterics, she said. I've been practicing my hysterics. She began going very red and screaming, so it hurt my ears. She hit herself on the head with her fist and rolled off my bed on the lino. I stood by the wardrobe where it was safer. She got up saying, thank you, and bowed to the 4 corners of my bedroom. Would you like an encore of hysterics, she asked. No, I said from inside the wardrobe. There was fluff all over her vest. If you don't clap enthusiastically, she said, I'll put your light out when you're reading. While I clapped a bit, she bowed and shouted, more, more. Auntie Gladys shouted upstairs, go to bed and stop teasing our Betty. The best thing about being a famous actress, Betty said, is that you get to die a lot. She felt the floor with a crash and lay there for an hour and a half with her eyes staring at the ceiling. She only went away when I said, you really look like a famous actress who's unhappy but beautiful. When I got into bed and started reading, she came and switched off my light. It's not much fun having a famous actress for a sister. Horror film. Well, say, first of all, there was this monster. But like, he's not really a monster, because in real life he's a bank clerk, say, and he sings in this village choir. But he keeps like drinking this potion, sir, and you see him like changing his pig with black curly hairs on his knuckles. And what he does, sir, is he goes around eating people's brains. Anyway, before that, sir, I should have said, he's secretly in love with Lady Irene, who's very rich with lots of long frocks. And she has this identical twin sister who looks like her, sir, who keeps getting chased by this monster bulldog into these sinking sands that's inhabited by this prehistoric squid, sir, which like she can't see because the deaf and dumb bailiff with the ump on his back has trodden her specs. Anyway, before that, sir, I should have said this Lady Irene is screaming, Henry, Henry, my beloved, save me! Because she's been walled up in the dripping dungeon with the mad violinist of the vaults by the manservant with the withered boots, sir. But it's Henry, he can't hear us, sir, because he's too busy. He's too busy putting people in this bubbling acid bath to make him stay young forever, sir. But his experiments keep going wrong. Anyway, before that, sir, I should have said, a dad can't rescue her either, sir,
because of the army of giants ants that's eaten his castle. And the music, sir, is going ta-ra, ta-ra, boom, boom, ta-ra, sir. And Henry, Henry, my beloved, she keeps screaming. And the mad violence of the valse, sir, he starts going funny all over the flagstones. And like Algernon said, no, not him, sir, the other one. He can't do nothing about the squid in the box because he's turned into this pig with hairy knuckles. Anyway, before that, sir, I should have said, there's this huge mummy in the library, and every time he hears this music, he starts tearing off all these dirty bandages and smashing through these walls and everything, and the professor can't stop him because he's gone off his rocker and keeps bulging his eyes and laughing a lot. When suddenly this vampire... Did I tell you about the vampire, sir? Anyway, before that, there's this vampire who's been dead for thousands of years, but he's a Swiss greengrocer in real life. But the iceberg his coffin's in gets all broken up, sir, when it collides with Dr. Strenkoff's submarine, sir, that's carrying this secret cargo of radioactive rats. Didn't I tell you about the radioactive rats, sir? Well, anyway, sir, before that, I should have said. This is about a girl who was doing typewriting class and she's no good at it, and she tells a story and she says, typewriting class, dear Miss Hinson, I'm spitting in front of my typewriter, because you're not very good at typing. Dear Miss Hinson, I'm spitting in front of my typewriter with the rest of my commercial sturdy students, typing you this later. The truth is, Miss Hinson, I'm not hippie with my cross. Every day on Wounds Day, I sit in my dusk with my typewriter, trooping without lurking at the lattice all sorts of weird messengers. To give one example, the quick down socks, the quick brown pox, the sick brown box, the sick down jocks hubs over the hazy bog. And everyone knows that a sick down jock would not be seen dead near a hazy bog. Another one we tripe is, now is the time for all guide men to cram to the head of the practice. My way of thinking, if that is all you get to tripe in true welks of sturdy, then I'm thinking of changing to crookery crosses. I would sooner end up crook than a shirt-hand Trappist, any die of the wink. I've taken the tremble, Miss Hinson, to tripe this later, so that you'll be able to underhand my indignation. I'm as clothed now as the bill is groaning. Yours fitfully. This is, you know, when you're at school, you have to sit in a hot room one summer answering questions, and it says answer any 2 questions from section A or 3 from section A. I can't even understand that bit. Never mind that. So the girl can't. This is a very middle class girl. She can't answer any of the questions. So she decides to write a letter to the examiner telling her all about her social life. Dear examiner, thank you so much for your questions. I've read them all carefully through, but there isn't a single one of them that I know the answer to. I've written my name as instructed. I put the year, the month, and the day, but after I'd finished doing that, I had nothing further to say. So I thought I'd write you a letter, fairly informally, about what's going on in the classroom and what it's like to be me. Mandy has written 10 pages, but it's probably frightful guff. And Angela Smythe is copying the answers off her cuff. Miss Quinlan is marking our homework. The clock keeps ticking away. For anyone not in this classroom, it's just another day. Mothers buying groceries, grandmothers drinking tea, unemployed men doing crosswords or watching Crown Court on TV. The drizzle has finally stopped here. The sun has just started to shine, and in the back garden in Sefton Road, a housewife hangs shirts on the line. The class chatters by to play tennis. The cathedral clock has just pealed. A motor chugs steadily back and forth, mowing the hockey field. Miss Quinlan's just seen what I've written. Her face is an absolute mask. Before she collects in the papers, I have one little favour to ask. I thought your questions were lovely. There's only myself to blame, but couldn't you give me something for writing the date and my name? Takes you back. Ah, right. When I was a boy, we used to go to my family in Liverpool, and there was an uncle. This is completely made up, but that's true about going to my family. And there's an uncle called Uncle Arthur, who was utterly disreputable, and all the aunties and the proper people hated him. And we'd play a game called, I don't know if you ever played this, called Are You There, Moriarty? You played it. It involves two combatants lying face down on the carpet, or the liner in our case, with a rolled up copy of the Echo, and then would move, and then one would try to hit him with the newspaper, and the loser ended up in intensive care. So it's called Are You There, Moriarty? None of my aunts cared much for Uncle Arthur. Somewhere deep down where auntiness is bred, they thought of him as evil, and worse than that, ill-mannered. He dredged his tea out of a saucer through the yellow sieve of his great moustache, removed his boots in mixed company, and smoked a huge curved pipe that smelled of condemned socks. Sometimes when contemplation took him, he chuckled to himself at private and disreputable thoughts and gob a stream of thick brown juice with sizzling accuracy into the heart of the fire. Arthur wasn't the stuff that aunts are made of, but if you were under 12 and relished blood and dirt, Uncle Arthur was magic. He could wiggle his ears till the cows came home, belch thunderously at will, and produce streams of soft-boiled eggs from either nostril. At Christmas, he came into his own. Between the turkey and the pudding, he'd play a game of billiards with his glass eye in the kitchen knife, shouting, "Pop the red," screaming anti-Muriel as the eye dropped into her lap. For his pièce de résistance, he'd remove his huge false teeth and make them sing God Save the King as he tapped the rhythm out with fervour on the spoons. And then after dinner, when the aunts retired to the parlour to snooze and share their disapproving clucks, Uncle Arthur would draw the blinds, turn out the lights, and tell us harrowing tales of headless, blood-stained men who flew down children's chimneys and performed such hideous deeds the girls had nightmares into March. While Cousin Edgar, who was sensitive and pressed wild flowers, wet the bed until his dying day. When only the strong remained, we'd play Uncle Arthur's favourite game, Are You There, Moriarty? Which involved a string of juvenile challengers lying blindfold on their stomachs and screaming out the challenge while trying to knock each other senseless with rolled-up copies of the Echo. And now, whenever I pass the cemetery where Uncle Arthur long lies buried, I think of him, stretched out upon a marble slab, his great pipe pouring smoke, spitting thoughtfully between his socks and laughing at us all. And for his sake I call, too quiet I know for Uncle Arthur's taste, Are you there, Moriarty? And it seems to me that from far away I hear a rolled up paper crashing down on some unfortunate skull. And from somewhere deep in death's chill parlour comes the kind of sound that disapproving aunts would make if they could ruffle their feathers. The Ghoul. This is a boy who wears makeup. Not that kind. He dresses up as a ghoul, and his plan is to scare his sister to death. The Ghoul. One dark and wintry evening, when snow swirled through the air, and the wind howled like a banshee, I crept silently up the stair. I sat in the quiet of my bedroom, and opened with bated breath my zombie horror makeup kit that would frighten my sister to death. And slowly my face began to change as I carefully applied the pack. I laughed at my face in the mirror, but an evil stranger leered back. Long hair sprouted wild from my forehead. My nose was half snout, half beak. My right eye bulged angry and bloodshot, while the left crawled over my cheek. My fangs hung low and broken, my chin was cratered with sores, the backs of my hands were mats of hair, my fingers grew long, bird-like claws. I heard my sister's key in the front door, heard her calling, "Anyone in?" Took a long last look at the thing in the glass, distorted and ugly as sin. My sister was running the water. She sang as she washed her hair. I heard her call out as the floorboard creaked, "Hello? Is anyone there?" And then I released my zombie howl as I crashed through the kitchen door. I caught sight of a ghoul in the window pane and passed out cold on the floor. Friend. This is about a girl who makes friends with a girl for a week and then falls out with them. I mean, she's a bitch, really. She's about 14 friends. When first I went to school, I walked with Sally. She carried my lunch pack and told me about a book she'd read with a handsome hero, so I said, "You be my best friend." After break, I went right off her. I can't say why. And anyway, I met Joan, who's pretty with dark curls, and we sat in the corner of the playground and giggled about the boy who brought the milk. Joan upset me at lunch. I can't remember what she said actually, but I was definitely upset. And took up with Hilary, who's frightfully brilliant in everything, and showed me her history, which I considered very decent. The trouble with Hilary is, she has to let you know how clever she is, and I said, "You're not the only one who's clever, you know." And she went all quiet and funny and hasn't spoke to me since. Good riddance, I say. And anyway, Linda's much more my type of girl. She does my hair in plaits and says how pretty I look. She really says what she thinks, and I appreciate that. Nadine says she was common when we saw her on the bus that time, sitting with 3 boys from that other school. And I had to agree, there was something in what she said. I mean, there's a difference between friendliness and being cheap. And I thought it my duty to tell her what I thought. Well, she laughed right in my face and then pretended I wasn't there. So I went right off her. If there's one thing I can't stand, it's being ignored and laughed at. Nadine understood right away what I meant. And that's jolly nice in a friend. I must tell you one thing about her. She's rather a snob. I get the feeling she looks down on me, and she'll never come to my house, though I've asked her thousands of times. I thought it best to have it out with her, and she went off in a huff, which rather proved my point, and I consider myself well read. At the moment, I walk home on my own, but I'm keeping my eyes open, and when I see somebody I consider suitable, I'll befriend her. This is a sort of send-up of an Enid Blyton story. You know how in an Enid Blyton story, 4 of them go to Devon or Cornwall, and they go into a cupboard. Oh no, that's the other one, isn't it? And they find an underground passage in the bedroom that goes down to the sea, and they find treasure and all that. And so this is a send-up. It's called Real Life. Yes, thought John, his eyes gleaming with excitement as he looked round the ancient inn on the edge of the moors that was connected to otherwise inaccessible St. Peter's Cove, which had once been a haunt of smugglers, by a secret underground passage from his bedroom, and which his strange Aunt Lucy had rented to his mother and father and Uncle David for the whole summer holidays. Yes, this looks just the sort of place for adventure. But that kind of thing only happens in books. And he was right. Well, that's about enough. Where's Stanton? How much time? Is that 40 minutes? Is it?
Well, I think everybody's enjoyed it. So, I mean, do you want to do a couple more?
I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Or a couple more, and then the evening isn't over. You're welcome to stay, ask Gareth questions, and there is some more wine, and there is some more wine upstairs if you want some. So you're welcome to stay and enjoy the garden. So let's, Gareth, do a couple more, yeah?
Well, You know obviously what Ben Jonson said, don't you? You know that he said, I'm joking here, he said poets are not only made, but they have to work at it. And it's very rare that a poem or a verse from a poem comes right into your head. And this is one that came, a whole verse came to my head. I was sitting in the back garden in Birmingham in August, and this whole verse came into my head. My friends walked out one summer day, walked singing down the lane. My friends walked into a wood called Time and never came out again. And that just came to me, you see, and I think, oh, thank God for that, do it again. But then you have to think, how do you write the next 10 verses and go with it? So that's what I had to do. It's called Salford Road, which is the title of my first collection that Penguin published. Salford Road. Salford Road, Salford Road is the place where I was born, with a green front gate, a red brick wall, and hydrangeas round a lawn. Salford Road is the road where we would play, where the sky lay over the rooftops, like a friend who'd come to stay. The gardeners lived at 55, the Lunns with the willow tree, Mr. Poole with the flag and the garden pond, and the Hardens at 53. There was riding bikes and laughing till we couldn't laugh anymore, and bilberries picked on the hillside and picnics on the shore. I lay in bed when I was 4 as the sunlight turned to grey, and heard the train through my pillow and the seagulls far away. And I rose to look out of my window, for I knew that someone was there, and a man stood as sad as nevermore and didn't see me there. And when I stand in Salford Road and think of the boy who was me, I feel that from one of the windows someone is looking at me. My friends walked out one summer day, walked singing down the lane. My friends walked into a wood called Time and never came out again. We live in a land called Gone Today that's made of bricks and straw, but Salford Road runs through my head to a land called Evermore. I never read this one, Death of a Gunfighter, which is about Doc Holliday, who died in bed, and he never thought he'd die in bed in a sanitarium. Doc Holliday, who are you waiting for with your fevered eyes alive? Why do your hands feed cartridges into your pearl-handled 45? Doc Holliday, why do you cock an ear to the hoofbeats pattering by? Who is a stranger on a jet-black mare with death in either eye? The room throbs like an oven, the sun climbs up to noon, the stranger sways in a rocking chair outside the Last Chance Saloon. Doc Holliday asks for a mirror, no reflection in the glass, only the ghosts of the men he's killed, smiling as they pass. The Pinkerton man in Ellsworth, when you were running from the law, the kid in Dodge out to make his name by beating you to the draw. The breed in Butte, Montana, who marked you with that scar, the dude who left a slug in your thigh from a face out in Wichita. You can't be searching for glory now, for eternity in the sun, but hoping to find a kind of peace in the mouth of a stranger's gun. Doc Holliday white as a sheet on his bed, the room about him reeled, coughed in his white bandana, stained like a poppy field. The stranger sits quiet at the bedside, watching the lifeblood spill. Doc's hands reach out for unseen guns, then slowly flutter still. The gun belt hangs on the bedpost, the hat on a hook on the wall, and the high-heeled boots he'll never wear stand polished in the hall. This will be the final one. This is an early one I wrote about. Oh, I'll read this one. I used to teach in a college of education, which is remarkable. When I spent about three days in a primary school, and therefore I was an expert on teaching. And they were all female students. Anyway, And one of the things you had to do, I don't know, any teachers here? Oh, yes, right. I used to go round and watch students teaching a class, and you'd sit in the back and saying, good, you have the window open, and things like that, you know. And whatever I told them to do, which I thought the main thing about writing in English was how to write a good, short, simple sentence. And whenever I went in, they were always teaching creative writing, which is about purple passages and you know, things like that. So this is a little poem of revenge on all those things, called Miss Creedle Teaches Creative Writing. This morning, cries Miss Creedle, we're all going to use our imaginations. We're going to close our eyes, 3W, and imagine. Are we ready to imagine, Darren? I'm going to count to 3. At 1, we wipe our brains completely clean. At 2, we close our eyes. And at 3, we imagine. Are we all imagining? Good. Here's a piece of music by Beethoven to help us. Beethoven's dates were 1770 to 1827. See the Age of Revolutions in your history books. Although Beethoven was deaf and a German, he wrote many wonderful symphonies. But this was a long time before any of us was born. Are you imagining a time before you were born? What does it look like? Is it dark? Embryo is a good word you might use. Does the music carry away like a river? What is the name of the river? Can you smell it? Fetid is an exciting adjective. As you float down the river, perhaps you land on an alien planet. Tell me what sounds you hear. If there are indescribable monsters, tell me what they look like, but not now. Your book entitled Tackle Prehistory This Way will be of assistance here. Perhaps you are cast adrift in a broken barrel in stormy, shark-infested waters. Remember the work we did on piranhas for RE? And try to see yourself. Can you do that? See yourself at the bottom of a pothole in the Andes with both legs broken and your life ebbing away inexorably. What does the limestone feel like? See the colours. Have you done that? Good. And now you may open your eyes. Your imagining time is over. Now it is writing time. Are we ready to write? Good. Then right away. Wayne, you're getting some exciting ideas down. Tracy, that's lovely. Darren, you haven't written anything. Couldn't you put the date? You can't think of anything to write. Well, what did you see when you closed your eyes? But you must have seen something besides the black. Yes, apart from the little squiggles. Just the black, I see. Well, try to think of as many words for black as you can. Miss Creedle whirls about the class like a benign typhoon, spinning from one quailing homestead to another. I dream of peaceful ancient days in Mr. Swindell's class, when the hours passed like a dream, filled with order and measuring and tests. Excitement is not one of the things I come to school for. I force my eyes shut, but all I see is a boy of 12 sitting at a desk one dark November day, writing this poem. And Darren is happy to discover there is only one word for black, and that will have to suffice until the bell rings for all of us.